husbands ought to stop doing tonight. You need to stop doing it tonight. All right? So let's bow and then we'll get into this. Lord, how we love you tonight. We praise you and we honor you and we lift you up. There is no competition. No God that we have ever created in this universe compares to you, because there are no other gods. We've made idols and silly things out of wood and gold and metal, but Lord, they're dumb and dead, and you're the only God there is, and we thank you for it and ask you to bless us tonight as we open your word and as we try to educate our spirits on how to become better at this matter of being to our spouses what you've been to the church. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. All right. Song of Solomon. Solomon wrote over 1,000 songs. He was quite the songwriter. But the Song of Solomon was the best song that he wrote. Do you remember years ago, what was it called, the Show of Shows? Y'all remember that TV show? Have you ever heard the phrase, that's the car of all cars? This is the war of all wars. That's the this of all that. Well, look at verse number 1. The Song of Songs. This is the superlative. This is the best. Nothing is better in what Solomon wrote. And if you'll go to the book of Ecclesiastes, Psalm, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, you'll run right into it. It's the next book right after the book of Ecclesiastes. It was written by Solomon. It is not an analogy of Jesus and the church. I've heard that forever. That's not what this is. This is a song that is a celebration of a husband and a wife and their relationship. And so I'm going to have to moderate my explanation somewhat because of who we have. And so anyway, look at verse 1. The Song of Songs, which is Solomon's. Now, the Shulamite, who was his wife, this is a Shulamite woman, is now talking to herself in verse 2. Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for thy love is better than wine. We're going to stop right there. Many couples in 21st century and before, the only thing they share is an address. They live in the same house, they solve the same problems, have the same kids. But how many marriages are you personally familiar with, and hopefully ours is one of these, where the husband and wife love each other? They don't just tolerate each other. They don't just come together to solve common problems and then drift back into their own worlds again, but they love each other. Men and women are different in every dimension, and we talked about this last week. We don't need exactly the same thing from each other. What you need, if you're a husband, what you need is not what your wife needs primarily. If you're a wife, what you need is not what your husband needs primarily. But what we need is vital. Every husband in here, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Jamie's 6. We need something from wives, and you wives need something from your husbands. And if a husband meets these 5 basic needs, he's going to be irresistible to his wife. If a wife meets these basic needs, she's going to be irresistible to her husband. You won't be attracted. The reason that affairs blossom in our culture is because there's an emotional nutrient missing in that family, in that marriage, that he thinks he can find somewhere else. You can't, but people don't know that, at least until it's too late. All right, so here's number 1. A wife has 5 basic needs, and these are in order, by the way, given to us by none other than Dr. Gary Smalley. Or Gary Chapman, rather. And Dr. Chapman has written a book called His Needs, Her Needs that I would recommend that you get and read. It's an excellent book. I require anybody that wants me to marry them, I require they read this book. And through about 45 years of marriage counseling, he has come up with a list for guys and gals. And here is the list for you ladies. Number 1, affection. That's your number one need. Now, these are in order also. Men, let's use our words to convey to our wives, we love you. We care for you. Non-sexual touch is huge to a wife. Is it not? Don't you like for your husband just to hold your hand or to come up and hug you, to touch you without, anything other than that in mind? And so to create an atmosphere of kindness, this is what you ladies crave more than anything else. And the second thing that you have need of is conversation. You need to be talked to. You need, and with. You say, well, what do you talk about? What do you talk about? What do spouses normally talk about? Well, there are some things, the events of the day, for instance. It's like we're like bees. We go off and we flit and we fly around and we gather nectar on our legs, and then we come back to the home. There's all kinds of conversational topics that could be talked about. And so you talk about kids, grandkids, one another. I think it's great for a husband, and I try to do this regularly, to tell my wife I think she's beautiful. You're drop dead gorgeous. You make that dress look good. I want her to know that, we've been married 30, going on 31 years, and I still think she's beautiful. She still has this appeal for me. I want her to know that. I don't want to ever, I told her years ago that I loved her. I don't need to do that again. Yes, I do. And so conversation. Do you ladies find it necessary to converse, not just about business? I know a home has business, and you've got finances, and you've got the water heaters leaking, and all of that. But those are not the types of things that you need to talk about regularly. You need some heart conversations. Then, by the way, without being judgmental or angry with your spouse. The third thing is honesty and openness. I find that guys are, is that light out back there, Jamie? In the vestibule? Okay. He's in the dark. Open your heart and learn to express your emotions in a non-judgmental way. I find that guys don't like to talk about how they feel. They find that, I don't know, help me out here. What's a good word? To talk about emotions, to talk about how you feel. Do you think that's feminine and girly and less than masculine to do that? It can be if the atmosphere is not right. But just to be open and honest. Do you ladies enjoy when your husband just tells you how he feels about things? You feel trusted? Because he's not going to tell that to everybody. You don't want him to tell that to everybody. Number 4, financial support. Men assume the financial support of a household financially, and if a guy doesn't make enough money to support the household, there are ways that he can upgrade his skills to earn more money. Now, I realize that in our culture, that a lot of women work outside the home. But I think it is the man's primary responsibility to provide for his household the things that household needs. Because what are some things that the household needs financially? Well, you've got rent or house payment. You've got car payments. You've got insurance. You have, food, clothes, vacations, all of that. I think it is the man. And I know this is old-fashioned. I'm aware of that. I realize that there are people that will say, well, that is just so troglodytic in its mentality. I don't think it is. I think it is the man's basic responsibility to provide that. Number 5, family commitment. Commit sufficient time and energy to the moral development of your household. It disturbs me when I see men leave the spiritual development of their children to their wives. How many times have we seen here? Probably in every church it's the same. Mom will bring the kids to church. Dad's off doing something else. Now, what's that telling the kids? What kind of message does that send to a child whose father is not consistent and regular in worshiping, serving the Lord in the church body? That tells us this is not important. This is not important. All right, and so here it is. Affection, conversation, honesty, financial support, and family commitment. You wives need that. You need to know that your husband has these things as priorities of his life. Now, a husband needs some things as well. It's not just a one-way street. A husband needs, you ready? Number one, sexual fulfillment. This is not, ladies, this is not your number one need. It's not. It's your husband's number one need. And so, without getting really graphic or anything like that, find out what makes him happy, because what makes him happy will make you happy, and what pleases him will please you. So that's his number one need. Number two, recreational companionship. I think it is great when a wife takes an interest in the things that interest her husband. That's a good thing. Now, guys, what are you interested in? What are some things that you find fun, recreational, things that just bring you some enjoyment? You know, hunting, fishing, shopping, whatever. And I think it is a wonderful thing if your wife finds an interest in those things. Now, that may not be her greatest joy in life is to go do those things, but her greatest joy in life is to spend time with you. And so we need to know that you ladies don't think, well, that's the stupidest thing. You want to go, go. Just, you know, well, that makes a man feel a little bit on the degraded side, that his interests are a waste of time, and they're stupid. Bless you, twice. And so develop an interest in the things that interest your husband. Number four, domestic support. Now, again, we live in the 21st century, and I'm aware of that. But I am convinced that you wives have the nesting instinct that a man doesn't have. You can create an atmosphere in a room that a man cannot create. You have this touch, the ability, and the need, and the desire to have a comfortable space in which to place your children and your family. And I think it is up to the wife to create an atmosphere that resembles a refuge, just a harbor of safety and security. Create an atmosphere that makes him want to come home. Now, when he comes home, and if the first thing he hears is griping and complaining and nagging, guess what he's not going to want to do at the end of the day? Come home. And so if you will create an atmosphere, not only emotionally, but even physically, and I've told Stacy for years that you take care of the inside, you know, I'll do the outside, and so if she wants to move this and that and the other, and that's what gets done inside the house. And so you want an atmosphere. Ladies, you're creative. Don't use all of your creative skills. Don't save all of that for the job. Use those in your home as well. And then number five is admiration. On a regular basis, remind your husband of how valuable he is to you. Not just because he brings you a check. All right? His value to you should go way, way beyond that. But acknowledge his achievements. Is he recognized at work as an excellent worker? Maybe he's received some kind of an award or presentation. Recognize that. Acknowledge that. Let him know, I appreciate you for, and then you fill in the blank. So avoid criticizing. Avoid the nagging and the complaining, and express a profound respect for your husband. If you do that, guess where he's going to want to come home? Guess where he's want to come home after he gets off work? Wants to come home. That's the kind of atmosphere that is an attractive, appealing thing. And so these are the five basic needs that a husband has and the five basic needs that a wife has. Now, what are some things that we've talked about a few weeks ago? Yes, ma'am. For the ladies or the guys? For the guys. Number three, honesty. No, I'm sorry. Number three for the guys. Oh, I didn't give you number three. Physical attractiveness. I will do that. Yeah, let me do that. I may have. All right. Number one for the guys, sexual fulfillment. Number two, recreational companionship. Number three, physical attractiveness. And let's go back and we'll talk about that just for a second. Number four, domestic support. And number five, admiration. Now, what about this physical attractiveness thing? Well, keep yourself healthy. I think that goes both ways, by the way. It's easier the older you get to care less about what you look like, right? I've seen people, the older they get, they just go to pot. And so find out what makes your husband happy. How does he like your hair fixed? Now, in today's culture, what would a woman say about that to, out on the street? I don't give a rip what he thinks about what I look like. I'll wear my hair any way I want. Okay, go ahead. I mean, you can do that. I don't care about what he thinks I look like in these clothes, or if I don't want to wear makeup, or if I don't, I don't want. Okay, all right. That's absolutely up to you. I'm talking about this quantifiable list of what a husband needs. He needs to know that his wife is attractive, and that she thinks what he thinks is valuable and important, and we'll try to meet that. And so thank you, Irene. Now, what should we as husbands stop doing if we're doing these things at all? Number one, never criticize or discredit your wife in front of the kids or in public. Don't ever do that. I've seen men do this to their wives in front of the kids. I've seen it in public places, that a woman would just get dressed down by her husband verbally. Call her out for her lack of cooking, or maybe she didn't clean the house just right, or it's not funny. And I've seen a lot of guys try to make jokes about this. And I've been in the presence of people when a guy would do this to try to be funny. I've seen preachers do it, absolutely. And if there is, and when our kids were coming up, if I told a kid something that she didn't agree with, or vice versa, the kids wouldn't know it. We wouldn't say, oh, no. Y'all aren't doing, you need to do this. Because I didn't want to give the kids the idea that mom's word meant nothing. I would back her up even if I did not agree with the instruction. We talk about that later. But how do you wives feel if you were criticized publicly or in front of your kids? How does that make you feel? Terrible. It wouldn't make you feel respected. It would not make you feel valued or honored at all. On the other hand, I think that a man should honor his wife publicly and in front of the kids, because where does a young man learn how to be a husband? By watching his dad. They're not getting this at school. And so I have the responsibility, and you have the responsibility. And now we got grandkids coming along. See, this bunch in here, nobody has any kids at home anymore. Basically they're gone. And so now we have grandsons and we have granddaughters. And so don't dishonor your wife. Stop dishonoring her. This is what we're supposed to stop doing here. Stop dishonoring your wife by criticizing her in front of your children or in public. Number two, stop comparing your wife to other women. Saying something like this: why can't you be more like? How would that make you feel? Why can't you talk more like? Why can't you dress more like? Why can't you cook more like? Why can't you clean more like? How would that make you feel if you were constantly being compared to another woman? That would denigrate you even more. And so never compare your wife to another woman. It will destroy her self-worth as quickly as anything else I know of. And so you cherish your wife. You honor your wife. Your wife, gentlemen, our wives, should be the definition of beauty to us in our lives. And, if you're in a crowded room, you're in a restaurant, you're at some kind of a big activity, lean over and whisper in her ear, "You're the most beautiful woman here." Now, you can say that and mean it, and should, because the very definition of beauty should be the woman that God has given you. And she needs to know that you don't have a pair of roving eyes, and you're looking around and checking everybody. Don't do that. Don't do that. All right, number three. When your wife tells you about a problem she's having, don't immediately try to fix it. She's telling you about a problem. Now it's where we need to open Pandora's box here for just a minute. Ladies, you have a difficulty. You've got some kind of a problem. There's something that's going on that's just really, really bothering you. And maybe it has for a while, a few days or weeks or maybe hours of the day. And your husband comes in and he finds out that, you're not doing really well that day emotionally. So he just tries to fix it. He gets out his emotional wrenches and tries to, fix it. How does it make you feel? Like the way that this has impacted you doesn't matter. If I could just fix the problem, it would be okay. That's probably not the case. And what do men usually want to do, though? Fix it so you'll do what? If I can tighten this bolt, I'll close the air valve off, and that normally, ladies, does that happen? So what do you want? You tell me now. We're on this number 3. When you have a very heavy burden on you, some kind of a problem, what would you like for us as your husbands to do? Listen. Okay? Should we try to correct your feelings? Now let me ask you this. Can feelings be wrong? Okay? Feelings can be wrong. Should we point that? No, you shouldn't feel that way. Is that what you want to hear? No. All right. Okay. How about something like, I can understand how you feel like that. I can see how you feel. I can see how that would impact you like that. But we are Mr. Fix-It gadget guy, and we want to fix this stuff and move on. And so you could ask, you want me to listen to you? Do you want me to tell you how to fix it? What would normally you ladies say? Can you just listen to me? You know what the number one complaint is when I counsel with a wife in my office? You know what they want from their husbands? They want us to shut up and just listen. Don't try to fix it. Yes?
I'm not complaining. I'm just pointing out we have to determine ahead of time. That takes time.
It does.
To quit trying to figure out what we're going to do next on our schedule. That's not natural usually.
Not.
To just stop, just be still and listen.
That's a struggle with me. Because you normally, I think some husbands are kind of like when their kids come to them with a problem. Daddy, I can't find my tennis ball. Well, that's really on a scale of 1 to 10, how big a problem is that to a dad? No, okay, not very big. How about to a kid that really wants to play with his tennis ball? That's a 9 or a 10. And so often we treat our wives like we would a child who has a problem that seems to be so minuscule that it's not worth worrying about. And that, I think, infuriates a wife. When we give you the idea, that's all you're worried about? That's it? You mean that you have spent all day fuming and this is all you're concerned about? I would suggest that all of us not say that. Would that be an accurate statement, ladies? That we not denigrate you and belittle you by saying that's all you're concerned about. If it concerns you, it should concern us. And so we need to make ourselves available. Just tell me, how has this impacted you? And what I've discovered in counseling and in talking with Stacy, what happens after a while in a pressure cooker? Steam goes out and it calms down. But what has to happen before the steam is normalized? It's got to vent. Exactly. And there are times when a wife can have a difficult situation, and that's all she needs. She just needs to vent to somebody. And thank God that she vents to you and not to somebody else. And because I'm telling you, and y'all know this as well as I do, there are plenty of men out there that want to play Mr. Fix-It to our wives. You know, if I had a wife like you, if I was your husband, I wouldn't, man, that wouldn't be a problem. If I, you know, and so they're doing what? They're fishing. You know, they know how to throw the bait on the water. And so, you know, I want Stacy to tell me, you got problems at work, got difficulties there, da-da-da-da-da-da. And she will often apologize. You know, I'm sorry I've ended. I'm like, no, I'd rather you tell me than anybody else. And so when she tells you about a problem, don't immediately try to solve it. Number 4, stop trying to control your wife. In a lot of marriages, men have the idea that they are somehow superior to their wife. I don't know where that idea came from. I think historically, in cultures around the world, that's the way it has been. Men have been the master of the house. And you women, historically, culturally, you have been relegated to cooking and cleaning and having babies. But as far as being an equal and having cultural parity with your husband, that honestly has never happened in history until Jesus came along. And when Christ came along, he raised the level of value for women like it had never been raised before, which is one of the reasons Christianity was so unpopular in the pagan world. Because the culture did not want you women to be on par with the men. They never heard of anything like that. That was blasphemous in contemporary cultures. But the scripture tells us that we are to be submissive to one another. And Jesus elevated you ladies to a position that was unheard of for the female psyche in any culture. And so I think it is a very unwise, unbiblical thing for a husband to try to control his wife. Now, on the other side of that coin, you ladies, what is part of your curse? What was part of the curse that sin put on Eve? Wanting, pain and labor. But also, the Lord said, your desire shall be to your husband. This is one of the curses. Now, and I read in a commentary one time that meant sexually attracted, and I'm thinking, what kind of curse is that? You know, for the wife to be sexually attracted to her husband. That's not what that means at all. What it means is desire to control. And so when sin entered the human species, guess what the female psyche then wanted to do? Control the husband. Run the husband. Be the political leader of the husband. And so there's been this head knocking ever since. And so Jesus comes along and he sets up standards for roles in homes. And he gave this standard. You ladies are every bit as valuable as a husband. Every bit. Your value, your worth is every bit as important as your husband. But you have a different role. We have different responsibilities. There's got nothing to do with value. And a perfect example, you got a pitcher and you got a center fielder. Well, who gets a lot of the attention on a baseball team? The pitcher. Cy Young Award winner. Man, he's won 25 games this year. All right. Let somebody crank one to the center field warning path and see what Mr. Pitcher's going to do with it. Do you need a center fielder? You need a center fielder. All right. Is that an important position? It's an important position. It is absolutely valuable. He can win a game. He can win the World Series with one catch, one throw. And so, ladies, your position in your home, your role in your home is different than your husband, but you are absolutely as valuable. Number 5. Don't, and this doesn't even apply to the group that's in here right now, but stop letting the wife do all the discipline of the kids. After a while, what do kids start to think about their mom? If she's the only one that ever disciplines, the only one that ever says, no, you can't do that. And I've seen this happen. Kids go, teenagers specifically, go to dad or mom and say, you know, can I do this? No. And then dad or mom overrides them, vetoes their words, say, yeah, you can go ahead and do that. And after a while, if mom or dad always vetoes mom or dad, what's happening in the mind of that child concerning the role of the parent that's being vetoed? You're not important. Your word means nothing. And so dads need to be, now dad knows how to tie a fishing knot, and dad knows how to change a tire, and he knows how to do all that stuff. But he also needs to take an active role in training children. As a matter of fact, statistically, we know this to be true. If a father is actively enrolled in the spiritual training of the child, that child's continued consistency in church shoots through the roof. But when it's just mom and there is no support from dad, the bottom falls out. And these kids, when they reach high school age, and especially when they go to college or get married, that it falls off to, I mean, it's minuscule. And so it is absolutely vital that kids see dad involved in this matter of teaching and training and being involved in the discipline of the children. So don't leave all of that to mom. Number 6, don't spend private time with a woman who is not your wife or is not related to you. This is, remember Mike Pence got in all kind of trouble? And it was called it was the Billy Graham rule, what it's called. And years ago when Billy Graham was active on the preaching circuit, he would not get in an elevator with a woman by himself. He wouldn't do that. And some people say, well, that's silly, that's ridiculous. Billy Graham would never let a female reporter into his hotel room to interview him, just the two of them. He would never, he wouldn't do that. Satan is so deceitful, and he is so good at this, that he can, in a moment's notice, have emotional fibers shoot from male to female, and there can be an emotional connection there that should never have been started. And if you had not put yourself in that position, that would not have been. And so, well, it was just a business dinner. It was, you know, we went on a business trip. And I think that's disastrous. I think it's disastrous to spend that kind of time with someone who is not your wife. You need to be very careful about that. Because even if nothing happens, even if nothing is ever brought to light here, what does it look like? And what would it take for somebody just to make a passing comment? You know, you don't have to be guilty of anything. All they've got to do is make the charge. And if you are accused of something, in many people's eyes, you're as good as guilty. Now, I tell the students at school, if you take care of the way things look, you take care of the way things are. If you take care of the optics, you take care of the way things actually are. And so you don't dabble in that kind of stuff. And this goes even into flirting with women, dabbling with pornography, and Jamie, you'd mentioned preachers a while ago. I've done some research on this, and it's frightening how many pastors admit that in the last 30 days they have visited a pornographic website. And I have counseled a lot of couples where this was the issue, and the woman just felt just murdered emotionally. Like I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not this enough. I'm not that enough. And he's gone looking for other. And the guy will say something like, "Well, I never met her, never touched her." Yes, you did. You touched her emotionally. Now there may not have been any kind of a physical contact, but how would you ladies like to know that your husband finds more pleasure on a pornographic website or spending time with another woman than he does with you? How would that make you feel? And so I need to take care of the way things look so that will take care of the way things are. Number 7 is basically the same kind of a deal here that we'll close out. Don't feed your sexual desires from any other source other than your wife. It's a part of marriage, right? It's a part of marriage. It's a wonderful part of marriage. It is a strengthening part of marriage. It is a uniting. It is a symbolic. What is it symbolic of? What is the sexual union a picture of? Exactly. And you say, well, no. That's exactly what it is. It is a picture of the union of Christ and the church. Is not the church called the bride of Christ? And the term consummated is used, that one day there's going to be the marriage supper of the Lamb. Now, there will be no physical union. I'm aware of that. This is a picture. It's like baptism is a picture. The Lord's Supper is a picture. It's not a sacrament. It does nothing as far as saving an individual. It is a picture. But now, this relationship is a physical picture of the relationship of Jesus and the church, but the Lord designed this to be an absolute anchor to the stability of a marriage. And so a wife needs to know, and a husband as well, we can spread this out a little bit, a wife needs to know that the totality of this need is met in her by her husband. She needs to know that she is the one that all of this desire is poured into, and a husband needs to know the same thing. That I provide the pleasure for her, and she provides that for me. This is an exclusive relationship. But our culture has perforated this relationship. And so now it's called recreational sex. And for years there have been swingers clubs. And probably all of y'all know what a swinger is. It doesn't just mean somebody that has a good time. It's when husbands and wives go to places and they just swap partners, and they swing from one partner to another. And there are people who think that's okay. Perfectly normal, perfectly okay. Nothing wrong with it. It just strengthens our relationship, and I say bull. That's the way to destroy a relationship. I don't care what the world does to redefine what God did, it will never improve it. It will always make it worse. And now we've even expanded the definition of marriage to include man and man, woman and woman. And the culture says, well, that's okay because this is what we want to do. Well, can you want to do something wrong? Is that wrong? Sure it is. It is a violation of God's design for marriage. We were walking to the ark whenever it was, Thursday, Friday. And aren't you glad that God didn't tell Noah to get 2 male chickens? I like chicken. Yeah, I like chicken. Yeah, I like chicken. How about he didn't say get 2 female rhinoceroses. That would have been the end of the species. You understand this is a violation of the pattern of life. All right? The reason God made us the way we are is so we can procreate, so we can continue the species. God wants as many people born because they can be exposed to the gospel and populate heaven with a family of worshipers. God wants his family enlarged and increased. That's the purpose of the New Testament church, is to preach the gospel so that men and women can hear the gospel and get saved, produce children, bring them up in a Christian environment so they can hear the gospel, get saved. That's what happened to me. That's what happened to you and you. You know, probably the influence of your family was the big thing that brought you to Christ. And so this is such an exclusive thing. And we live in a culture where, oh my word, men and women are just fearless when it comes to flirting with anybody. Jamie?
The latest terminology I've heard is
Polyamorous.
polyamorous. That was the female senator in California. She was married. She had a girlfriend and had multiple sexual partners.
Yeah.
And that one of the I think representatives from Michigan defended her.
Decision? Yeah. Polyamorous. Poly means what? Amorous? Love. Meaning love, yeah. And that's where we're going. And when we as Christians say that is a violation of God's pattern for relationships, you're going to be the one put on the defensive. Even in churches, Paul mentioned it this morning, right now, in the Methodist Church, it's going to split. And it's not over the deity of Christ. They're not splitting over creation. They're not splitting over the inspiration of the Bible, which actually I guess that's the foundational issue. They're splitting over the gay situation, gay priests specifically. And I'm just telling you that churches that remain bolted to the foundational principles of the Bible are becoming less and less and less, and are becoming targets for IRS investigations. They are becoming targets for retribution by politicians. And what do you do?
Well, it's term hate speech is what our stand is being called.
That's exactly what's being called. And so preaching the Bible, if it violates culture standards, if that's hate speech, then that's all we do. Because that, Scripture runs diametrically opposed to cultural standards. It does. Now, we can do that. We can preach with vitriol and hatred. We can do that. Or we can preach the Bible. We can present this in love. And it will make a tremendous difference in the impact that it has on people. And I've told you for years, you can put medicine on with a cotton ball or a steel brush. We can preach the truth with anger and do more damage, or we can preach the truth in love. We were talking about this at lunch today. Are gay folks welcome to come to Riverview Heights? Absolutely. Absolutely. Are thieves welcome to come here? Yes. People that got out of prison, are they welcome to come here? Absolutely. Drug addicts, welcome to come here? Yes, we have drug addicts come. Every other Wednesday night, we'll have a good number of drug addicts come. That's who the gospel is for. And Paul said, and such were some of you. We ought to be very careful about where we put ourselves. Wow, I wouldn't associate. Well, there was probably a time when somebody said that about us. But we have been saved by this wonderful grace of the Lord Jesus Christ. And so we're a dwindling culture, and what I mean by that is people who believe in the biblically patterned form of marriage. We're dwindling. We're being snuffed out. Churches and religious leaders who can't stand the heat are caving on this issue. And not just this issue, but every creationism. There are people out there that are caving, and they're trying to stick creation. They're trying to pile millions and even billions of years into the creative week, and the word day was not a 24-hour day. It was just millions and millions and millions of years, and so, you know, that life has just sort of evolved through the years, and I've been stunned. I'm just going to tell you. I was watching a video, snippet of a video that Ken Ham showed. And William Lane Craig, who is an apologist, very popular apologist, was asked, how old is the earth? And he said, well, we've got to go with the scientific evidence that the earth is at least 4.55 billion years old. Now, if you do that, you are opening Pandora's box. It's called the gap theory. And I am not a gap theorist. That there are millions of years between Genesis 1:1 and 1:2. I don't believe that. There was another very popular young pastor, Andy Stanley, was talking. Now, I like Andy Stanley. We've used some of his stuff here in our Sunday school here. But he said something that surprised me. I didn't know this about him. But he was talking about the singularity from which God created everything. And he was talking about how that, you know, when it comes down to belief in this singularity and this thing that exploded and became the universe, he said, we've got to believe science. I saw him say it. I would not have believed that either, but like, whoa, what? And so the bottom line is the Bible is becoming marginalized because it does not fit with the scientific model that we've come up with. And this philosophical model, because the more you spread the boards on the floor, the more ideas you can pour down the foundation of evolution, theistic evolution, got all these kinds of frameworks of creationism, and we cannot do that. Matter of fact, in the next few weeks, the first of the year, we're going to begin some studies on creationism. We're going to begin some studies on just exactly what God did when he put this together. Are there unchanging universal principles that God established, or are they culturally defined? Is morality culturally defined? Now, is fashion culturally defined? Yeah. We would be out of place in parts of Africa, the way we're dressed right now. Completely out of place. You ladies that don't have your arms covered, you'd be completely out of place. You don't have your legs completely covered, you'd be out of place. You'd be inappropriate. But here, you're fine. You're fine. And so there are a lot of issues that are food culturally defined, music culturally defined. God, not culturally defined. He is self-defined, and he's defined himself in the Bible. And so if we abandon that foundation, we lose who God is. So we cannot do that. We cannot afford to do that. All right, we're going to stop right there. I'll let you go a little bit early tonight. And thank you all for being here. I appreciate your presence very, very much. And before you go, a couple of you young people, would y'all come down here, please? It doesn't matter who. There we go. Would you give one of these to every husband? You know what a husband is, right? Okay. Would you give one of these? Let me split these up since both of y'all came down here. Give one of these to every wife. This is some homework. This is going to be interesting. I gave them all out. Sorry. You won't be able to do this in a short period of time. You might not do it at all. I don't know. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. All right, we got some here, and this is for the husbands, and this is for the wives. All right, very good. They're basically the same. Yes? Oh, there you go. Okay. If they're not here, well, let's see. I don't know what we're going to do if they're not here. Why don't you take that to them if they're not here? So just in way of explanation, the statement applies. We've got, on the front page, you've got 25 questions. And the key is up the top left-hand corner. 0, almost never. 1 is seldom. 2, sometimes. 3, much of the time. 4, almost always. So you put a 0 to 4 on the line on the right side of the page. And then add up everything down at the bottom. And then on the back side, don't stop. Complete each of the important sections below. They will be most significant in determining how well you know and understand each other. And then the 2 personality weaknesses in me that my wife would like most to see strengthened are. Okay. That's all right. So we will. All right. The wives. Let me see if it's okay. There you go. All right. We'll get you. All right. We need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Make about 6 or 7, Anna. Do what? Yeah.